Good evening. Thank you for joining the Monday, November 13th edition of the Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioners, and Cemetery Commissioners meeting. Before we begin, this meeting is being recorded. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board of Selectmen would like to note with great sadness on behalf of the town, a couple of town officials lost family members recently. Heather Arnold from the Board of Health and Treasurer Collector Rich Carmignani. I'm sure I speak for everyone when we send our deepest sympathies and condolences to both families. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. First on the agenda, accept minutes of October 30th, 2023. Mr. Marcy?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes of October 30th, 2023 as written.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next up, citizens' comments. Is there anyone here to speak about anything that is not on this evening's agenda?
Can't require a vote either.
Did you mention this is being recorded, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I did. I meant first thing I said.
Okay, I missed
Being
it.
recorded.
Hi.
Hello.
Pat Fanning, Partridge Hill Road. Sent you guys an email this week regarding the lien on my property due to the road betterment assessment. And I was wondering if I could have an update, because I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I believe we've reached out to legal regarding that, and we haven't heard anything back. I believe for now what the bylaw says, it says, but I'll let Mr. Ruda.
I'm just waiting for an opinion from town council as to how to handle that.
Okay.
The treasurer hasn't been around for me to talk to, so.
Okay.
We're working.
Well, I spoke to him, and he said that, and the assessor, and they said they haven't had this situation before, which surprised me, because I thought other people had done the road betterment, but
You guys were
Does-
first.
well, we are. Anyway, I just wanted to say that it only makes sense to have the town remove the lien on the property. I did not put the lien on my property. I didn't do anything to deserve a lien on my property, paid all my taxes on time in 30 years. So, I think it's the town's responsibility to remove the lien. So, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Okay? Thanks. Thank you.
Pat?
Anyone else? Nothing. Next up, we have the public hearing, tax classification hearing. Mr. Ruda, what time was that hearing posted for? I don't see it on the agenda. Or was there a time at all? I just
Public
don't-
hearing, it commences with the right along.
Just
with
want to
the
make sure we
agenda,
weren't
so.
early. Chair will open the hearing at 6:36 p.m.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ruda.
the principal assessor asked me to put this on the agenda, the day that the agenda was being posted, and then after it was posted, she wasn't quite ready to go for this one. So my suggestion would be that that the chair, without objection, continue the hearing, and we set a date of 11/27 for that hearing, because we have to meet that calendar. And you just, without objection, continue the hearing until that time.
So you don't need a motion, just without objection?
Yeah.
Any objections?
No.
No objection, Mr. Chair, but there was a email that went out, or part of the holdup, I guess, was information wasn't coming from one office to the other. And we're not gonna dig too deep because they're not here tonight, but I just was wondering or hoping has that issue been resolved?
As of this afternoon, I believe it has. It's Debbie's here.
Not quite.
There were two, I think there were two issues. We're waiting for the final resolution on that.
I'd like to, at that next hearing, I would just like to have a brief update as to what was the genesis behind the inter-office delays, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Deb.
Objection?
No, that would be fair.
Absolutely. Can we put that in that, Mr. Ruda? Michelle? Thank you. Anything else on that? So we'll move it to, what was the date again?
We'll have to schedule another meeting for 11/27,
11/27.
at 6:30.
Thank you. All right, if there isn't any objection from the board, I'd like to take something out of order. The appointment of the assistant treasurer under chapter 41, section 39A. Any objection to that? Okay. So treasurer collector, approve appointment of assistant treasurer under chapter 41, section 39A, or take any other action relative thereto. This was tabled from 10/30/23. Mr. Ruda?
Rich was obviously not able to make it tonight, as Mr. Sullivan mentioned, and he's proposed a gentleman in the back, Mr. Robertson. Could have him come up, please. To be hired and appointed. Now, the job of the Board of Selectmen is to approve that appointment. My office has completed the query and background check and the pre-employment physical. So we're good to go on my end.
We're good to go with everything.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. I graduated from the College of the Holy Cross at spring of 2020, and I had a lot of interest in finance, even though it wasn't necessarily my major. My major was psychology and religious studies. So initially, I got a job I was assistant manager for a local credit union, and I was really excited for this opportunity just so I could kind of make my way into the administrative side of finance. And growing up in Dudley, it would be a great honor to become part of the public service institution. So I'd like to say it's a great honor to be considered for the position. It would be even more so to be appointed to the position, of course. And I'd like to just extend my gratitude to each of you for the opportunity.
Any questions from the board? Nothing? Questions? Board will chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Morrissey?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. James, thanks for coming forward. Looks like you passed all the pre-employment checks, and the treasurer collector has chosen you to be his assistant. So I move that we approve the appointment of the assistant treasurer under chapter 41, section 39A, or take any other action relative thereto.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Nothing? I do have one question about your resume. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. It says that you graduated from Holy Cross in December of 2020 and Shepherd Hill in June of 2020. That's not correct, is it?
Oh, that wouldn't have been correct. I graduated in June of 2016. That must have been an oversight on my behalf with my resume. So I graduated from Shepherd Hill summer of 2016 and Holy Cross actually in summer of 2020.
What would be that would be aggressive. Agreed. Anything else? I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to
Wonderful.
seeing you
Welcome,
around the
James.
town hall.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Coming at the right time. We need your help.
Next on the agenda, new business, Tom Scanlon, Scanlon and Associates, Public Auditors, public discussion on the town's annual independent audit processes and review of fiscal year 23 draft audit findings. Scanlon, you can come forward, whichever you prefer.
You might want to sit.
Yeah. There's no microphone, I don't
They're right
believe,
here.
unless we can move one.
I'm gonna do a pre-
Any preference? Not the one that buzzes all night.
You're acting like it's a bomb or something. How's everyone doing tonight?
Excellent. Yourself?
Not bad.
Appreciate you coming, thank you.
My name's Tom Scanlon. I'm the managing partner at Scanlon Associates. We specialize in auditing municipalities across the state. We have about 80 clients across the state. So just general background about myself and the firm. We have 12 people that work at the firm, and myself and 4 others were assigned to the town of Dudley audit. And then I just wanted to walk through you tonight, like what we do, the reports you have, kind of get a general idea of what we do. I encourage questions because no one wants to hear me talk all night. So there's basically, we did a financial audit for the town of Dudley. There's basically 4 reasons to have a financial audit. Any agency oversight like DOR or Department of Education, uniform guidance. If you spend over $750,000 in federal expenditures, you need to have an audit. General sound practice, and if you issue bonds in the bond market. So you have 2 of those. You are over $750,000 in federal expenditures, which would be your ARPA, pushed you over. A lot of communities are being pushed over because of the ARPA. And you should have 2 reports in front of you. I sent them to John, so hopefully you have them. It's financial statements, and in there you'll see that the audit opinion, that's basically our main objective, is to opine on your financial statements. That's the whole objective of a financial audit. What we don't do a management/operations audit or a forensic audit. Those are 2 different engagements with different objectives that come with. Sometimes they overlap, but what we're doing is just a financial audit. And I know it's always an expectation gap between, when you hear the word audit, I think their sole purpose is to find fraud. It's not. We're doing opining on your financial statements. So I kind of just want to walk you through what that means, what we do, how we design our procedures. It's a risk-based audit. So when we look at your financial statements, that's how we're designing our audit procedures. So when we look at them, your 2 main assets are your cash and your receivables. So again, as a firm, we focus in those 2 areas. We spend a lot of time in your treasurer and collector's office. We're really at the bank statement level, testing the individual, make sure the recon items are good, timing, making sure the expenditures on the right period. If you have a reconciled item, make sure it's documented, like it's a deposit in transit, or make sure it's clearing out in the subsequent month, and that your reconciliations are timely. And that's very important to us as we assess risk on your financial statements. If you turn on pages 18 and 19, and just look at it. Governmental financial statements are very unique. You actually have 2 sets of financial statements within them. When you look at a company, you usually have 1 balance sheet, 1 P&L. You actually have 2 balance sheets and 2 P&Ls. One focused on an entity-wide, where depreciation takes effect, and the other statement is the current. And what we're looking at is your governmental funds, which is the modified accrual. And again, as we look, you see like the cash and the receivables. So we're spending a lot of time in those 2 areas. For instance, on the real estate tax, we make sure you have proper segregation of duties. You have an accountant who records the transaction. You have the collector, treasurer, who takes in the transaction, records it in the subsidiary ledgers, posts the payment to people's accounts and residents' accounts as they come in. So one of our procedures is we get a detailed listing by levy year, like 2023 real estate taxes. Get a detailed listing, and we make sure that outstanding list equals the town accountant's accounts receivable. And then if there's a variance there, then we dive down even deeper. We go 1 more layer down. The other thing we do is on your tax recap sheet, which tonight when you're supposed to have a hearing, you're putting it together, is on there. That helps develop what you're going to mail out in real estate bills. So that number on there, which is on page 1, we go to the tax collector software to ensure that you mailed out that amount in bills. And again, the detail is all there. And then from there, the collections as it goes into your general ledger, which is separate on the accountants, we'll do a procedure to make sure the collections in the subledger at the tax collector's office matches what's reported on the town accountant's ledger. So again, if we see variances in those areas, we go one level down. So we spend a lot of time analytically, looking at budget versus actual, looking at like anticipated revenues compared to what came in. And we look for deficit accounts. So as we assess risk on your financial statements, those are the areas where we're kind of focusing on. For instance, your budget is another key area we focus on. Is you go to town meeting, I know you had multiple town meetings over the past 6 months, but that bottom line town meeting, what you voted, we make sure that gets properly put on the tax recap sheet, and it flows all the way to the amount you build out. So that whole process would comparing things analytically. Again, if there's any variances, we go one step further. You could go all the way back to the bank statement level if they continue to have variances. And if you do that under those circumstances, that's when you would kind of call for a forensic audit. If every step of the line you have a variance, and then you're at the bank statement level, you have a variance. That's when you kind of cross over to a forensic audit. And then forensics are very specific areas. You just don't say, we're gonna have a forensic audit of the town. They're very specific driven. And that's when those areas would call out for that. So from our standpoint, we're not finding those variances. The town's very responsive when we go through. And again, we're spending a lot of time at the bank statement level, because we, as a firm, we feel that is if you're balancing your cash, the rest is kind of just geography on your financial statements. And if you look at page 19, that is kind of like your P&L of the town, just for the governmental funds. The first column is your general fund. If you look at your revenue, you see your total revenues are just under 20.5 million. 14.6 is property taxes, which that's your real estate and property taxes. I kind of just went through some of the testing that we do in that area. Intergovernmental, that's your next highest revenue stream. That would be your state receipts, your lottery, but now they call it a different name. Unrestricted revenue is when you look at your financial statements, when we want to assess risk on there. The risk is you're going to put a general fund receipt over in the non-major column, which would be your grants, revolving funds, any kind of restriction from the outside that would go into there. So for instance, that's blind and surviving spouse reimbursement. That's a general fund receipt. The risk is that's going to go to a non-major fund, not to the general fund, and your free cash is going to be understated or overstated. And as free cash is very important to a town, you're making your decisions off of it, so you want to ensure that is correct. So what we do is we get a printout from the state that tells us all the state revenue that was provided to the town, and we trace that into your general ledgers to the town. So again, it's telling us if they gave you a grant, say for police or for fire, it's indicating on that report, and we want to see that out in the non-major funds reporting. We don't want to see a grant being reported to your general fund, which then would flow to your free cash. So as we assess risk, again, on the revenue side, that's kind of where the risk is. It's going to be in a different bucket than it's supposed to. If it's going to be restricted revenue, it's going to be in your general fund. If you're taking a general fund revenue and you want to put it out to a special revenue fund, and then that's the risk we're assessing, and we're looking for as we go down on the non-major funds, we'll look for deficits on that account. And again, if you have a deficit, we'll go and look at that account to say, why is it in deficit? You're not reimbursing, you're not submitting for reimbursements from the state on a timely basis, or is there an expenditure that it got misapplied? So again, analytics, we look at the deficit, for instance, Chapter 90, that program, as a firm, we assess that as high risk because it's on a reimbursable basis. So you're spending and then you're submitting. So again, we expect that account to be in deficit, but it also should be coming over the next 90 days on the account, and then we will go through that and make sure it does come in and make sure you're submitting timely. I know your free cash in 2022 was reduced by not having timely submittals on Chapter 90, but it came back to you this year. That was gonna become, and if you turn to page 22.
Mr. Sullivan.
I'm not sure with Mr. Scanlon's permission per se. Are we gonna wait till the end, or we going to ask questions as they kind of pop up? How would you like to handle it?
You can ask me anytime.
Do you have something?
Yeah, well, I kind of do. I mean, we all got the documents in front of us.
Yeah.
And just for the record, I believe Scanlon and Associates have been the town's auditor since I've been elected. And I said it publicly before, I'll say it publicly again. I am quite comfortable with the level of work they provide for the town, the response. My first question, real quick, we didn't touch on it yet, but when you do your management letter,
Yep.
excuse me, I got something going on here. You've made suggestions in the past.
Yep.
Has the town ever not implemented a suggestion, to your best of your knowledge?
My best to my knowledge, no. And I will say, as a town, you're very responsive, your management, from your town manager to your town accountant to your town treasurer. There's certain things we do disagree on. We would say, we prefer you do it this way, but they'll come back to us. They're very responsive. They take the responsibilities on it.
Because the reason why I'm asking, again, I want to let the presentation go, but it was brought up at a public meeting not too long ago by a citizen who happens to be here, who may want to address it later, who basically called your audit a pro forma audit, and your management letter was a boilerplate that you use all the time, which I know is not true. So I'm sure we can address that later.
Yeah.
You know, and then we had another person who publicly posted on social media that you were coming in to discuss your sham audit that you conducted on the town's behalf, which, again, I think is blatantly unfair for, I've seen you in action, I've seen your firm in action. It's a sham to be the furthest thing I would describe it from. So, my
Mr.
question,
Sullivan, could I correct you, rubber stamp?
I'm sorry, rubber stamp, not sham. I don't do social media, so sometimes I lose. But, so the stuff you've discussed already, and you talked basically about the difference between forensic and
Yep.
financial. You've made it clear that a forensic would be my words, big problem. You would have found a big problem, a big issue, which would force you to go down another layer. And we don't have that, do we? We don't have,
I have not found that. I mean, we're going through 2 forensic audits right now in communities. For instance, what got us to those 2 places, and I can talk about them to a point, is when we're going into the collector's office and there's a detailed outstanding list, like for real estate 2023, there's a variance to the GL. That signifies it to us you're not balancing. And then we'll go, okay, let's get the report that has the activity for 2023. We'll have like total commitments, total abatements, total tax title. And there's a column that says adjustments. Well, we focus on adjustments because adjustments are the outlier. You don't have any of those. But say like you did, and we look at the adjustments, and the adjustments will go lever down. You don't have backup to it, but you're just adjusting taxpayer A's account with no backup from the assessors issuing an abatement. Then we go one level down and say, what's this taxpayer's account? What do they have in common? Do we have other characteristics? Are adjustments happening across the board to multiple taxpayers' accounts? We're not seeing any of that. So that would get you to a next level of forensic audit, and I'd be the first one to tell you you'd be at the forensic audit, which I've, like I said, I'm going through 2 right now. You know, I know I take a lot of pride in my work, and again, if it was just me, you can call me a clown, that's okay. But I got 12 people that work for me that take pride in their work too. It's been with me a long, long time. So, I mean, we do take this seriously. In my opinion, it's not a rubber stamp. So for instance, we pull 40 invoices to make sure that there is invoices back. So you have controls in place. You go through a warrant. The warrant is signed off on. The warrant equals your check registers, which you got 2 people different preparing. You got town accountant's office preparing the warrant where it's being posted to the accounts. And you got the treasurer's office issuing checks. Again, here's a control where those 2 line up, where the check register equals the warrant. Again, that's controlling that checks aren't leaving the bank statement. that aren't authorized. And again, there's signatures along the way. So as we pull our 40 expenditures, signatures mean something to us. I mean, someone's reviewing it, someone at the departmental level is reviewing, someone at the management level is approving it. We've never found any variances between the check registers and the warrants. And again, you're issuing 27 warrants a year, and we're probably sampling 12 to 14 of those on the gross totals looking for signatures. And again, we're looking for analytics like deficit accounts. That's big for us. Collection rates is another big thing for us. Like on the real estate levy, is your collection rate, I think, is around like 97, 98%, which is very good. So you don't have a growing tax issue, which you'll see kind of a core characteristic of a forensic audit, taking that next step where, you know, your collection rate is at 90%, you're not taking tax liens and your tax title is at $5 million. Well, that signals for us something's going on. You're not collecting the taxes, or they're being diverted, or we just don't have any of those characteristics. The other test we do, just so we kind of like we developed it as a firm, is we take 1 month and look at the cash going to the bank, because we want to see cash going. And if you don't have cash going, again, that would be a recommendation of another step. Hey, there's no cash going for the month of March. Why? That's odd to us. So I'll say if you didn't have no cash going, we'd take the next step, maybe go to another month, and then we'd probably go out to a department like your building inspector, or, you know, motor vehicle excise is a big cash payer. It's usually like low dollar amounts. So those are the steps we're doing. We never see anything that would say that trigger that next step. Again, you know, the expenses that we're pulling, they all have invoices behind it. For instance, if we pull our 40 and 10 of them don't have an invoice backing up from the warrant, we're probably going to pull another 40 to see if it's a common thing. Or we may trace it to one department. You know, I don't want to pick on one department. Well, the police are here, we can pick on them. Say the police department, it was always missing invoices. Well, we'd probably go really focus in on that and look at the department, start any kind of reoccurring characteristics. So we are out there doing it. I don't know if there's any specific questions on that. I got no problem discussing my work to anybody.
So, Mr. Chair, then I'll leave my time on it, but, so, your opinion, your experience, there is no red flags. Everything, so far you've talked about, is checked up. And I know it's gonna be asked or said somewhere, you're contracted to work for the town and you report your findings, but you don't report to the town. Like, if nobody up here could say, if there was a discrepancy, don't worry about it, we'll figure it out. You have a professional reputation, license, and experience, where you would handle.
I would walk away from here if you said that to me.
Thank you. I appreciate your honesty.
Wrong.
And like I said, I'm going on 20 years, so your firm has been around a long time.
And we try to switch, the other thing too is we try to switch personnel around our audits, you know, trying to get the same person doing the same thing for 10 years in a row. We try to switch them up in spots. So, yeah, so I mean, that's something as a firm, we try to kind of, we have one common thing, that'd be being at the top and Jeff overseeing the thing, so that's common theme across all our audits. But as far as like cash goes, looking at the bank statements, we try to switch it up every 3 to 4 years and people looking at them, to get a different perspective. That's just a firm thing. But again, I got no problem if someone wants to come in and look at my work papers and what I do, what we do at the bank statement level. I just didn't want to bore you with like the actual testing we're doing, like ticking off the outstanding checks.
Mr. Chair, I think it was important that some of that things got emphasized, and it makes sense, but to the average person, including myself, may not understand. Like you said, you find a sampling of warrants. If there's a problem, you take another batch, or you go further back in time, I'm sure, and pick on the police for a moment, if that's where the problem occurs, that's where the deep dive starts.
Yes.
It doesn't just get glossed and say, well, it'll work itself out down the road.
No, we definitely make projections. We do a lot of substantive analytical, like for instance, what we're seeing across our first several audits of the year is motor vehicle excise taxes are coming in higher than estimated for all across all municipalities. So again, as we get that kind of knowledge based on, so when we go to a town, if we see where motor vehicle excise is below what they estimated, that would be unusual for us. So we'd probably spend a little more time in the collector's office just looking, did you not mail out a bill? And then we'll get from the registry what they committed to you to what you should have mailed out. So things like that, I can do a lot of, nothing really jumps out at us. I mean, I know, what Debbie said, one thing when we were doing the audit this year, your capital projects with your Mass Clean Water Trust projects, there was some things that didn't make sense to us at different accounts, and so that initiated us to go deeper. So we went deeper and we looked at all the expenses, looked at your drawdowns that we got from Mass Clean Water Trust and kind of tied them all out. And what it was just kind of an accounting. There was 4 accounts that was making up for one project, so it was more operating effectiveness. So we had Debbie combine the accounts as we went through, went back and all those expenses and just reclassed them. So again, there was nothing ambiguous going on. It was more just an accounting nature. That's what we came to the conclusion of. So those are the things we're taking. So we do find things that we were going to do testing and just it will come out.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Question, how many people did you have here for how long actually physically here doing the audit?
So there was 4 people that worked on the audit besides myself, so I was the 5th. I think here we were here for 1 week. Those 4 people were in and out, like probably 2 days apiece. But with COVID, we have like a hybrid of audits. We do a lot of remote work now and a lot of on-site. It's probably helped efficiency for us a little bit, and instead of us here sitting here and traveling here, we can do a lot of stuff remotely with our portal being loaded up. But we still want to be out at the town looking at invoices. We want to go into your warrant. We don't want you pull the 40 invoices for us and send them to us. Just as a firm, we don't want that, because you get a general feel of what else is in the warrant. You may pull invoice 442, but as you look going through, you may see something weird on another invoice in there. Just, hey, I'm going to look at this a little bit further. So we're here for a week, in and out.
So random sampling as opposed to allowing the town to choose its own invention?
Correct. So what we do is we do a random sample of 40, and that kind of gives us general feel. Then off of that, we go from procurement and take 2 to 5 purchases that were over the procurement thresholds, and we'll test your procurement compliance, like for projects over 50,000 to make sure you went out to bid, you advertised. And then from there, like Chapter 90, we deem that a high-risk project, so we're looking at every invoice within Chapter 90. So whether you had 4 or 20 of them, we're looking at to make sure they got reimbursed. Again, journal entries are a big thing for us too as an auditor. Obviously you have your routine journal entries every year, like your closing entries, you set up encumbrances, set up subsequent years expenditures. Those are considered routine. When we go through and look at our sample journal entries, we're looking for non-routine journal entries, like something that's going between non-major funds and general fund. That would be non-routine for us. We'll look at that, making sure it's appropriate, make sure it's approved by the department head. You're not just adjusting things. So for instance, like in the receivables, what we kind of focus on, we look for journal entries in the receivable. So again, if there's red flags, and Debbie was just making a journal entry to adjust the receivable to Rich's outstanding list every month. Again, we would tell you in a management letter, and that'd probably be a significant deficiency or material weakness. Again, we're not seeing any of those. You do have journal entries. I mean, you do make errors. I just think the errors are more of, from an accounting standpoint than something dubious going on.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just have
Go ahead, Trey.
a couple questions through you to Mr. Scanlon. First of all, thank you for coming tonight and educating us. A couple questions, or more than a couple, but you've touched on a lot of them. We did some conservative revenue projections. We've taken some heat on that. We explained that about checks and balances that we have to go through for projecting revenues and stuff. Now, with your firm, your experience, your professionals, if you could just talk about what you didn't already talk about, generally acceptable ways for municipalities to project revenue estimates, checks and balances that are placed to restrain revenue projections, to keep them realistic. What's the best way for a town to measure on an ongoing basis revenue estimates, how they're performing? Process for getting free cash certified, its importance, and what's specifically required from your office and the Department of Revenue to gain certification. What factors, including the unknowns, contribute to a free cash number? Perhaps talk a little bit about Dudley's free cash numbers that were recently certified. Explain how it is or is not reasonable to say that they were higher than usual, such as motor vehicle tax receipts. Was this an unusual circumstance for the town, that all the towns that you serve? Would you be able to make that? Chapter 90 reimbursement was also part of our free cash number. Can you explain how Chapter 90 reimbursement works and how it is essentially a reimbursement? Where you would get into this on the forensic audit come from, such as terms that I've seen out there, red flags or triggers, which would initiate. They just don't come out of the thin air. The only other thing I could find for municipalities is if someone wanted an audit, that it was usually politically motivated outside of the triggers or the red flags, which they're not inexpensive, they're very expensive.
Yeah, they're very expensive.
Which you're taking out of the budget that could be used somewhere else that you really need it. That's why they're triggers. That's why they're checks and balances. That's why they're flags, and that's why you explain you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And you explained how with Dudley, you didn't have to go that deep because you find your answers, but we're very responsive, and we resolve it. And you've answered about you experienced red flags with other towns and do an audit. So that was good. Have you taken, I guess we'd look at steps and communicated with the necessary entities to move an audit or forensic audit forward, which if you're doing two of them, you already have, and you've explained that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you've touched a lot tonight. I'm not here to get anybody to think a certain way or change their minds. They're gonna think the way they wanna think, and they're gonna say what they wanna say. Just presenting the facts. And right now, I think the free cash issue I brought up would be a good starting point to talk about.
Yeah, that's what I was actually gonna do next,
Okay. Sorry,
actually.
Tom.
That's no problem. Now, on page 22, this is probably your most important financial statement. This is your budget versus actual. This will tell you where your free cash is coming from. So as we look at it, the first column is the amounts that you carry forward as an encumbrance from last year's budget into this year's budget. That was a legal obligation that you had to pay. For instance, you got a PO on June 30th, but didn't get the part in until mid-July, and then you actually pay for it in the subsequent fiscal year. The next column is your original budget at town meeting that you went in the springtime. And then the final budget is your budget after all special town meetings, adjustments, basically when your recap is set. And then the fourth column is your actual basis. And then the column all the way to the right, that is where your free cash is being generated from. So when we look, your free cash was certified at 1.3 million, 1,370,000 to be exact. 751,000 came from the revenue side. And you'll see the biggest driver of it was the excise and other taxes, which is your motor vehicle excise, your cannabis, and your meals. Again, you're very, when you look at your revenues, and you should take like a 5-year revenue projection. there's a lot of oversight on the revenue side when you're setting your tax recap by DOR. And DOR, it doesn't let you go above 5% raising it. They have a review process in place that they look, page 3 on the recap, where they look. And anything that increases more than 5%, you gotta give them a lot of backup to it. You need to say, like, the building inspector we see, you in prior years you budgeted 50,000, all of a sudden you budgeted 100,000. They're gonna wanna see the check in hand coming close to 100,000, or the reason for the increase. That's why it's important to have your receipts like up to date for the first part of the fiscal year until your recap is set. So in prior years, you've been very conservative. From my approach, from an audit approach, I want my towns to be conservative. So again, all depends what your philosophy is. If you want free cash, then you're gonna use free cash to do projects with. Then you want to go low on your estimated receipts, but that also increases the tax rate. So again, you increase your estimates, you're lowering the tax rate. You kind of want that fine balance. You know, a municipality's basically number one asset is its ability to tax. That's what separates you from the private sector. Is you can, and you should be taking that, because that's a very large responsibility too. So as you look at your estimates, if you go low, you're going to get free cash, and how you're using your free cash. So what you don't want to do is increase your local estimates to reduce the tax rate, and then having the subsequent fiscal year that, okay, when we get free cash coming in, we're going to use it to do XYZ projects. You're probably not going to have free cash because you just used it to reduce your tax rate. So understanding how you generate free cash is also, on the other side, important of how you use it. And then, you know, if in the way bond rating agencies look at you, when you get to the bond market, and the way DORs are looking at you, is a general rule of thumb is to have your free cash and stabilization fund to be 10% of your budget. I think you're just underneath that. You're like at 7.8%, somewhere around there. So again, understanding how your free cash generates, again, like your motor vehicle excise receipts, you're very conservative. You generated your 400,000. And on the expenditure side, you had turnbacks at 281,000. And so as when you look at the budget versus actual, and you're assessing risk, like education, that's your largest. Your budget's 22 million. The education's 11 million. It's 50%. And again, it's an assessment that comes to you. So, not a lot of control over that. And again, when we're looking at expenses to test, we're testing those, making sure we're writing to the school district or getting a copy. They're making sure their assessment was the proper amount, or you paid the correct amount over. And again, then you go down to your next largest is public safety, which would be your fire and your police. Again, that's more payroll driven, is expenditure driven, so we'll do a lot of analytics and payroll. And again, you didn't have a lot of turnbacks for your size community, with your 1%. And then on the transfers, and that was to generate free cash to 63,000. That had to do with a prior year indirects with water and sewer that generated that. So when you look at your budget, you generated 1,096,774 in free cash to the current budget. Probably should be asking yourself, well, how'd you get certified at 1.3 million? Where's the difference coming from? Is DOR takes a very conservative approach. They're going to penalize you for any deficit accounts in your grant funds, and if you don't get it in by September 30th. So Chapter 90 last year, the submittals didn't come in until after, and they reduced your free cash from the year before 320 something. Again, I think as a board and as your finance committee and any other citizen that wants to look, is you should get on DOR's website and look at your free cash certification and what they reduced you for. That's one steps we look at is what did they reduce your free cash for. Again, if it's deficit accounts, we'll look at those accounts right off the bat, saying why were they in deficit, why didn't they come in by September 30th. So when DOR does reduce your free cash for deficit accounts, it's just a temporary reduction. You get it back the next fiscal year. So your free cash from the year before, the deficits was was for I'd say it was like 320. Yes, 320,000 from the year before.
Yeah. So I understand it, maybe people at home, Mr. Landry's point, excellent point about free cash. You just explained it, almost a quarter of our free cash number for this year was reimbursement for Chapter 90 last year,
Yes.
roughly.
Roughly, yep.
And that's a one-time infusion of capital because it wasn't credited to last year. It's not like we're gonna get an extra. People that follow along have asked me, why did we get an extra 300 plus in Chapter 90? We didn't, it was last year applied to this year.
Yeah, when you looked at June 30th, 2022, you had a deficit account of
Right.
320, I believe is the number. And so the state says, oh, we're gonna put a hold on your free cash, we're gonna certify you lower by 320,000 on June 30th, 2022. Because just in case it doesn't come there conservative. 2023 comes in, when you close out your books, it came in, the deficit's not there anymore because the reimbursement came in. And so you're getting it back.
Right, and again, Mr. Landry touched on some other numbers, and you explained, I think, about like excise tax, for example. And that was a number that came up earlier in our discussion. And nobody, I mean, I assume that the assessors could probably do a deep dive, but it seems like that number is inflated more so because maybe cars came later. People got cars, or the tax bill, if I bought a new truck this year, my excise tax would probably be double my old truck. So the assessors would issue the abatement on the old bill, we'd get the new excise tax, and the difference would add to the pot of excise tax revenue. Again, if it's a newer vehicle or a bigger tax bill, that's almost like another one-time infusion. Because the number we got this year, and we had a discussion with the gentleman that's here tonight, the number we received in excise tax was, I don't have it all in front of me, was almost the equivalent of what we received in the last 5 years combined. There was like a 90, I don't have it in front of me, there was a 90,000, there was a 50, there was like a 70, and this year all of a sudden we got 300.
Oh, for access?
Yeah.
Yeah. Surprising, we're seeing that in a lot of our communities.
Yeah, a lot of towns are seeing that. I saw the discussion in the paper about Oxford. And that once again, that excess is a one-time infusion, because unless people are really doing well in today's economy, they're not gonna be getting new cars every year, for example, or new trailers, or new campers, or new boats.
No, I mean, that's why it's important. Motor vehicle excise is market dependent, so you never wanna, in my opinion, never wanna budget exactly what you get in. Again, if you understand how it's affecting you, it's okay. But again, it's market dependent, so next year it could drop.
Right. I mean, I would love to, as a taxpayer, I would love to see our full-time financial people, as you said, you wanna stay with a conservative. I'd love to see a excessive budget number of 300,000, just for example. But like you said, if it doesn't come in, it raises a red flag when you go to the state. So that's why your opinion, and I think the town has followed it, I mean, again, that could probably speak better than I. We are pretty conservative on our estimates.
Yeah, I know, I mean, it's something we discussed, I wanna say,
We reach our benchmark estimate usually.
yeah, I mean, pre-COVID, I know we discussed about being a little bit more conservative on your estimated receipts, because you're getting close. People that I want to say it might have been 2020, 2019, somewhere in there. You know, what you were budgeting was coming in. I know the state was concerned, I was concerned. And I like to see these conservative numbers. Again, it's market dependent on it.
We have to reach that benchmark too, like in our budget process.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the other things I would like to point out is you used ARPA funds to fund your budget the last 2 fiscal years, which you can do. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable to do that. You know, and there's one thing so when we see that as auditors, accountants, and DOR also, is those are one-time revenues that you're using to fund your budgets. In talking to town management, to town manager, to town accountant, I felt comfortable that the process was understood of what was doing and how it was gonna impact future budgets, and you understood the impact of using ARPA in that way. And not too many towns, that use funds like that. I felt more comfortable in this town. understood the consequences, or consequences of bad word. We understood how you're using them and what the impact was gonna be on future budgets. So,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Ruda could speak to it better than I can. We actually used ARPA to help the school system in budget process, right? And for them,
Well, we used ARPA during the height of the pandemic, when
Right.
there's no chance we were gonna ask for an override, because as Mr. Scanlon said, that, you know, he was concerned in 2019, 2020. I was concerned when I first got here and opened the book, and
well, you
then the
told us.
pandemic hit, so it was either ARPA or we try to raise taxes in the middle of the pandemic.
Right, and, you know, we made it clear during the budget, I know this board did, made it clear during the budget process with the schools. It was a one-time infusion of capital from an outside source, you know, the government. And as you, I know as you stated, a lot of towns weren't in the same position we were, where they had to use it in order to, otherwise we would have cannibalized the town side, which is where we were headed pre-override. So, again, I appreciate, and again, I'm not trying to dominate the conversation, but I appreciate your honesty, your bluntness, that was it the perfect scenario? Like, would that be something you recommended in the big picture, but we needed it? And it's one time, it's not, we're not gonna get 3.4 million or whatever, 5 million.
no, it'd be
Next
nice,
year.
but it'd be nice, but no, you're not.
So, thank you, again, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Tom, to build on that a little bit, just like you touched on free cash, and the factors that go into it, specific pertaining to Dudley, you know, and the drivers of our large, free cash amount number this year. Is that something you're seeing at other towns that you work with? You know, is it like, is this, I don't feel like this is an anomaly for Dudley, knowing that we've,
Having a high free cash for 2023,
yeah,
no.
okay.
We're seeing, like, I think if you get DOR's dashboard, you'll see it across the large communities. Something we've had conversations with the year before, that, yeah, between ARPA funding, just through COVID, just your local receipts were down. DOR is not gonna let you go more than 5%, even though you went through a pandemic, so you're going low and they're coming in high. So we're seeing high free cashes across pretty much all our municipality audits.
And were they doing similar things, like spending conservatively because they weren't sure what was going to happen with future events, in addition to one-time
Yes.
chapter 90s, things like that? Okay. Right, so I think we said it all publicly, we stand by the way we did that. I mean, it worked out in the end, but you don't know that when you're actually making decisions and making a budget at the time. So I just curious to see if other towns run it.
There's nothing here in your financial statements that, I mean, we can disagree about, you know, using the ARPA to fund your budget and understand the impacts down the line. But as far as triggering something that would indicate fraudulent activity, no.
Did I go
Yeah, go
first?
ahead, please do.
Just a quick question,
Yeah.
just a couple sentence explanation on each. You had brought up forensic audit and operational audit. Could you just give a couple sentences on each, and maybe in what they're used for?
Yeah.
And then maybe, nothing to hold you to, not a quote, but a ballpark, like what a complete operational audit of the town and a complete forensic audit of the town, complete forensic audit. Boy, haven't heard that often, have you?
I seem to hear it every town I go to now. So you wouldn't do a forensic audit of the whole town. I mean, I wouldn't even know how you would even approach that, because a forensic audit is more, it's a specific area approach. Now, it may lead you to multiple sections across the town, but for instance, we'll start with the tax collector's office. That's where probably a majority of them come from. And usually forensic has some sort of misappropriation of asset going on with it. And again, it's very specific. And, you know, the ones that I've been involved with, usually like in the treasurer's office, like cash isn't getting to the bank. Why? Let's go one level down. Then you find Joe Smith's check being posted to Mr. X's account. Again, then you start looking at all those transactions. So forensic has it's usually, again, a misappropriation of assets, and it's very defined areas. I mean, it could be from there's a town, they had a large project going on. They went through the invoices, every, when you went to the general ledger, every expenditure had a invoice behind it from the construction company. But they wanted a forensic audit in that area because they didn't like the way the money was being spent. They went and did a forensic audit, I want to say it was $92,000. You know, going through 100 invoices. They found every invoice was there, every invoice was billed, but there was some discrepancy in the amount of the, like, sand and gravel to what was billed, and I think it came to like $4,000. So there could be avenues where you go off your accounts to go to it more forensic natured, and then so that's on the forensic end of it, and then the other end of it, operations audit, which I don't necessarily disagree with. A couple of our towns have done them. A lot of them in the area of public works seems to be like snow plowing is. Do we have enough staff to do it, and should we plowing our roads different? How do you plow your roads? When you come in, do you check in an hour before plowing the roads? How do you put sand down? I mean, that's above my knowledge base, but there's groups out there that will do a public works department of how you're set up. That's more of an operations audit. It's how effective are you? Are you properly staffed? Are you overstaffed? Are you understaffed? You know, do you need 4 trucks, or do you need 5? Do you need 3? Police departments have been having operations audits. You'll see, be reading in the paper. So operations are more like how you be more effective. Now again, you may start off with an operations audit, and that could cross over into like a forensics audit. You know, when you get into like, you know, looking at, one community several years ago, they had high overtime in one of their departments, and when they went and looked at it, they found out, geez, 2 of the members weren't working the overtime, and that led into when looking at the key fobs, how they ring into the building, and that got more into the forensic audit. You know, geez, you worked this whole weekend, but you didn't go with your fob key card once, but you have 16 hours of overtime. So they can cross over, but that's generally the 2 distinctions between it.
So an operational audit could be by department, not just the town. It sounds like it would be specific to departments, correct?
Yes, that I've been a part of. Like I know DOR will do a financial operations. I don't call it an audit, but they do a financial review. And it could be 2 departments, your whole financial picture. You know, maybe, geez, you need 2 people in the accounting department, or you need 4 people. Or they should process the warrants this way or file this way. So there's different ends of that. But hopefully I answered your question.
It did, just the ballpark. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, what would a ballpark cost be for a complete, well, you had said you don't know where to start with that.
Yeah, like the forensic is really, you need to be detailed. I mean, on the one I just did with the collector's office we had, that was $55,000.
One office.
One office, but that individual stole way more than that.
We don't appear to have that issue, though.
What's that?
We don't appear to have that issue. There's no red flag.
No, again, there's red flags all over this. Again, and I got no problem if someone wants to come and look what we do. I got no problem sitting down with anybody, and they can look at through my work papers. This is what we do, and I can show them the detail of the red flags and everything. I got no problem with that.
Mr. Mercer?
Yeah, do you have any, like, examples of how much an operational audit would cost? Ballpark?
I've seen them from like 5,000 to 150,000. Depends on what you really want.
So my question, Mr. Chair, my point, and again, I appreciate him being here tonight. You know, this is very, very informational. And you just kind of hit a nail on the head when it comes to free cash or revenue. Because of COVID, some of our revenue, and Deb would know better than us, some of our revenue was less than previous, or because of pandemic related. We're restricted to that 5% to DOR.
Correct.
You touched on it quickly, and it kind of caught my attention that when the money's coming in exceeded even that 5%, it looks like people would come to the outsider, they might look at it and say, the ubiquitous you, budgeted such a low number, but we're constrained by revenue plus 5%, and if it exceeds it, like you said, when the revenue's low, the 5% add-on is even low, so it's very easy and explainable why it would exceed it, which went to Mr. Landry's point of part of why his free cash number was much higher than we historically had. I mean, you probably know better than I, but our historical free cash number is somewhere around 500 to 700.
I want to say 500 to 600 off the top of my head. Just
Again, I'm not pinning you to a number, I'm not pinning myself. Someone at home is gonna look right now and say, oh, free cash was 601, Sullivan's a liar. But historically, but you've already explained why almost 50% of that free cash was a one-time revenue, and it's easily explained where it came from.
yeah, no, it's definitely easy to explain to where it came from.
Yeah, there was no, I'll be the devil's advocate, there was no hidden, none of our financial people hid revenue from the board when Mr. Ruder's charged with creating a budget. We worked on our best numbers, and sometimes it comes in higher, and next year it could be lower.
Yeah, that's the whole thing of a budget. I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah, no, you summed it perfect, you summed it up perfect. Almost 50% over that free cash historical number is explained away by those two line items.
Yeah, I mean,
Chapter 90, the austerity measures, and the higher than average free cash, excise tax.
yeah, I mean, and again, if we saw the motor vehicle excise lower in that and it's not a negative number there, we would probably go look to see, did you mail out the 3 commitments?
Right.
Was the commitment late? Was there timing?
Outstanding, yeah, is there bills outstanding, is there a collection number outstanding?
Yep. And just for reassurances, if you, on page 18, that's your governmental balance sheet. And you'll see under general fund, the unassigned number, the 1.7 million. Stabilization is factored into that number. So if you take your free cash and your stabilization that you didn't vote for 24, so your stabilization funds, at June 30th were 794,000, but you voted 534,000 out to fund your 24 budget.
Yeah.
With it, so that brings it down to 260. And then there's some gap accruals, like 6-day receipts. You come right back to that number, and I give you a breakdown. If you start with the free cash number, I can walk all the way through and get you that. So I'll give you some assurance that the number free cash being certified is represented in your financial statements. And then I would always encourage the non-major funds. We have it broken out in the back of what they're made up of. Is look at them, see if anything stands out to you. If there's a surplus or something or account, I always encourage the board or finance committee to really look at those back schedules. 'Cause there might be something, there might be an account sitting out there that's under our threshold they're not looking at. Because again, we're looking for high surpluses, deficits. And again, we're not looking at every single account across your general ledger, because we'd be here for a year.
Not a red flag.
Yeah.
Red flag, like you said, you go down layers.
Yeah, again, deficits are a big thing. Budget versus actual. Maybe your budget, 50,000 for, I'd say, overtime, and there's 200,000 that was spent for overtime. We're gonna go look at that account and say, geez, what happened? Oh, you had an oil spill where you had, had to close down the town for a month with overtime. So certain reasons for it.
Did you have anything else?
I think that's it.
Marcia?
So, thank you, Tom. That was real helpful. And one of the things you said was kind of the things that I was going to bring updates to the public on tonight ties into this. Is that you've heard a lot of this at all your other municipalities that you do this work for, which
Yes.
was interesting to me, and it didn't feel unique to us, but it was nice to get that validation. So, but as representatives of the town, you know, we've had some requests from, you know, colleagues and
Yeah.
residents that ask us to look into it.
Johnson? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
Oh.
you. I was
Okay, sorry.
having a sidebar to see if
Oh,
anybody had any
no,
questions.
I was on a roll. So I took that seriously. You know, people really questioning about, like, you know, a lot of things this year didn't look like it did last year, right? So people, obviously, that raises questions. You know, the topic of, you know, an audit, we want an audit, so thank you for explaining the different types, you know, how you just can't, like, yell audit, and it'll just happen. I get that. So I have had no less than 6 meetings, lengthy meetings with the state auditor's office in many different divisions of that office. The auditor, Division of Local Services, Division of Local Mandates. They kind of, to talk to different people about, like, what options do we have as a town? You know, essentially saying, here's what's happening, our residents are saying this, you know, how can you help us, right? And since they theoretically represent us, or all of us. So I came back with a couple different things. If I want to net it all out. One was in the area of, there's some opportunities to work together with them on things like state-owned land. They don't they don't pay the same amount for each municipality, so there could be opportunities. They'll create reports for us. And this is all ongoing stuff, because they don't work very quickly, right? I have to do this in my spare time when I'm often not available to meet their schedules, to learn these things. So I thought that was a positive thing. There's some also things like local mandates. We always sit up here as a board and say, you know, this is another unfunded mandate from the state. Well, the Division of Local Mandates, which sits under the auditor's office, actually says, you know, if you guys disagree with something like that, tell us about it, and maybe we can work together on it. Things like dams and stormwater, things that we've picked the ball up on that were neglected for years and years and years. There's like things that we're supposed to do that we don't have the staff or the funding to do. So there's some next steps there. They also do workshops or road shows for municipalities, or they have done for specific municipalities, but oftentimes they'll do it for several at once at like an MMA event, where they'll come in and talk about, you know, free cash, Chapter 70, and all this other stuff. So there's some things that they want to, like, maximize their time and reach, so they will work with us and other towns to do that. So that's another thing. The other thing was, I just was honest, like, well, you guys are the auditors. You know, you guys just audit things. And they said, we're not just going to come in and audit you. That's not how any of that works, right? And I explained all the different things. I'm like, you need to have a reason to audit. So just exactly what you said today. So I want people here in the audience and people at home. So is that if there was a reason, they would do that. But in order to get them involved, we would have to request them to come in and do that. And one of the guys, to quote, said, I don't know why you would do that. You know, it's gonna cost money, you have to go to town meeting and appropriate all of that to do that. So I wanted to tell everybody that I am asking the questions about audit. I heard you, all right? And I'm trying to get some answers from our state officers that, you know, are interested in hearing from us, but didn't really have a lot of great answers. They don't want to get involved with the back and forth of, like, you know, accusations of what these things might or might not be, and I get that. But they would help if we asked, you know, what it's gonna cost the town, essentially. But, you know, again, it's usually like if there was a reason, if someone, like, if you found something and they would say, they would pick up on that. But, you know, they would write me a letter, a formal letter that would said, you know, depending on how you guys do that, we would come in and audit. The last piece was, you know, we talked about operational audits. I know people had talked about the school was looking into it. You know, if we had ever done anything like that, we would join with the school. It wouldn't be like them and us. Since seeing as the school gets part of their money from us, it's all connected. It would be through a third party, not DOE, apparently. School hasn't decided on that yet, but like I said, these are things that we're looking at, and there's more to come. I'll have more to say the more I work on that, but hopefully in the shorter term, finding, new ways to like get some additional money out of the state from state-owned land to how they can help us with dams and stormwater. The conversation just took us to places where I didn't think it would go, and it was very, very valuable. So I just wanted to share that with everybody, with you here, Tom, because it's very relevant, because I called because what about, people want an audit, how do I handle that? How do we talk about that? So it was, I spent 12 hours, talking to these people about that. So so it was an information sharing as well as
Yeah, I mean,
information of what you had said.
it's usually, usually if we find something, I've worked with the AG's
Yeah.
office before, various
Yeah,
things.
I'm gonna talk to so-and-so in this department, wow, okay, so I just kept.
Yeah.
Right.
But again, if anyone, I got no problem laying out my work papers.
Sure.
Showing what,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? I didn't mean to cut you off. I was
No,
just trying to
it's okay.
organize it.
No, I was just-
Anybody have any questions out there? Mr. Bragg, go right ahead.
Question, Tom,
John, could you just say your name, your
Oh, sure.
address for the people at home?
Yeah, John
Thank you.
Breyer, 16 Flaxfield Road, Dudley. Tom, would it be fair to say that probably 95% of your time when you do an audit is spent with the treasurer and the accountant and working with them and, yeah.
Retail transactions, financial
Exactly,
transactions.
bank level, as you said. And I mean, I've worked with Deb for years and Rich, and have always had the highest regards for their integrity, their competence. I think when people hear audit, some people get defensive. And I said earlier when we had the budget discussions that audits are good things, especially if you're in a position of leadership, because it allows you to see what's out there, know what you're getting yourself into, make sure that everything looks good, so that if something happens, you're the one that found it and not the one that caused it or whatever from neglect. So audits are not bad things.
That's why we do one every
But-
year.
22,000
Yeah,
reasons
that's
to
why
agree
nobody
with
does
it.
that.
That's why we do one every year.
The situation that developed, in the spring and the summer was a very unfortunate situation, and it really got people saying, what the heck is going on in town? The forecast, because they're cutting fire, and there was no reason, like in retrospect, there was no reason for any of that to happen. But when we look at, when you do your audit report, there isn't, and I went through as many as I could find, there is no supplemental addendums for the municipal excise taxes and the revenue portion. And again, because I know it's at the bank statement level. So if I wanted, like for instance, it was impossible to find anywhere what the excise taxes actually were received.
For all fiscal year?
Yeah.
Right on her Schedule A. Pull them all up the Aurora website.
In the actual official audit?
The audit, it would be under these excise and other taxes.
John, you provided.
I know you have excise and other taxes,
90% of that.
all right, but like, for instance, the ambulance fees.
Ambulance fee is under charges for services.
Yeah, you see, so it would be nice if going forward, where you actually, the other services actually show an itemization. Because being a data geek, the more data you have, you can trend it out and you can see what things are running. If
I agree with you 100% on that, but if I put every category on here, this thing would be, 20%. You need a magnifying glass to get that. That's why we use the broad categories that the state has.
use more paper.
Yeah.
But it's important because
Yeah.
if they had an exact track record of, say, the motor vehicle excise taxes, I mean, the only way I was able to dig it up was just doing my own forensic stuff. And
I didn't give it to you in
yep,
5
and
minutes.
she was one of my resources when I needed data.
That's all
But
it was.
it'd be nice to be able to actually see that. Go ahead.
What resources do you have, Mr. Brown?
What resources?
Those forensics.
The Wayback Machine, for instance. It archives everything.
Be specific, please.
The Wayback Machine. That's a specific website.
Archive.org.
Archives everything on the internet.
About last year's? This current year? I thought you said you had the details on this current year's.
Well, the trending, you could see what the trending was because you had the data. I mean, you could see, right, if inflation's running 17% and the average truck price on a Ford 150 is no longer 45,000 but 85,000, it's easy to realize you're going to get a lot more at municipal excise tax.
Someone's gonna buy that in Dudley.
Exactly. But if they lease it, they still have to pay the excise tax.
But you can't project that.
Yeah.
You can do what you just said, but you can't project people are gonna buy in Dudley, and you're gonna get that excise.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, and I think that that's the rub right there. DOR would never say, John Bryant has a Wayback Machine, and he figured out that people are gonna buy new vehicles in 2023. Therefore, you can project over $300,000 in additional excise. That's where the disconnect is. It's very difficult. It's very easy at this point to go back and say, well, you should have known that people were buying new cars. That's just not the way it works.
no, I understand that. And all I'm saying is, if the data was easily available, like for instance, on the website, it's impossible to find the old annual reports. It's impossible to find it. Me and Deb spent a good year and a half uploading every document that we had prior to the website conversion, and all that data is gone. So I couldn't find the annual reports online anymore because you could actually read about ambulance fees and all that other stuff. So all I'm saying is, you know, on the audit itself, it would be nice that at least maybe the 5 top revenue producing departments in town, which might be your ambulance, right? Your motor vehicle excise taxes, enough so that they can trend it back and see what the average is, and then, right, add your 5% if you think the economy will support
I
it.
think they have pretty good procedures in place to track their revenues. I mean, they're reviewing them, Deb and John are reviewing them on a monthly basis, and they're making projections. But you gotta understand, when they're developing, the 24, so we'll say it's gone, so in 25, they're already developing in the springtime what they're gonna project out. Now, if you do know this, please tell me, because I wanna know what the increase in cars are gonna be. But, so you're projecting, like in March and April, going to you're developing your budget for 25, you're going to town meeting, and then you're setting your recap come October. The first round of excise coming out are gonna be that February based on purchases of that fall. That data just isn't there.
Yeah, actually it is. You know, through companies like AI, you can actually purchase that data, real-time registry information that'll tell you in your town what vehicles are being bought at what prices.
But I'm from the perspective, it's because it's on the internet, doesn't mean it's true.
I'm not saying, no, this is artificial intelligence. There's entire industry being built around it, and it knows real-time what's being sold and what. But anyway, I was just saying this as a suggestion. It would be nice on the audit to actually have a detail of the actual revenue, and it's not there.
Well,
And then,
these are the acceptable industry standards. I mean, those are the main
Okay.
categories. You got, excise and other taxes would just be meals. So of that, the meals, I think, is like 85,000. I don't think that's gonna affect anyone's judgment on that.
the bottom line for me as a resident in Dudley, I want transparency. I want easy access to information. I want to make sure that every dollar that I am giving to the town is being spent as if it is the last dollar on earth, right? I mean, you have people that are struggling, the economy's tanking, and so when people talk about audit, they want operational audits, they want performance audits, they want an audit of equipment.
Correct.
And I'm glad that you stated that
Always.
it's bank level here, because the amount of reporting that the state requires, we can take an army, and you do a fantastic job, don't get me wrong. You do a fantastic job complying with all those federal state mandates when it comes to that.
Yep.
But that doesn't tell you if a guy at the transfer station isn't pocketing $20 a day, right? It doesn't tell you if someone is putting in overtime hours that's not there. And so that's all the people want, is they want to make sure that there's accountability and transparency, because they're willing to invest, as you saw with the overrides. They're willing to step up and help. They just want to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of, that's all.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna take that backwards, John, if you don't mind. Nobody's, and I know you're not accusing, so
Yeah.
don't think that I think you are. To put in the public domain verbally, like you did when you called it the template for the auditor's report that
The
time.
boilerplate.
Boilerplate management letter, you called it. There's nobody pocketing, for people at home, there's nobody pocketing $20.
Oh, yes, I'm
because they
sorry.
don't take cash. That was something that was recommended several years ago through the audit, that we go to checks and not stickers only. If there, and Jeff can speak better than me, if there's a bulk drop-off outside of your sticker, you pay by check. You don't give $20 to the guy at the transfer station. And
That-
second, we were
appreciate
talking
that.
about excise tax, you were, John. You said, I can't find that report. When we had the discussion back in May, I said, John, where are you getting your number, 300,000? You went, I got it right here. You walked up, you handed me a town document that you got, whether you had to do it forensically or whatever, that gave the last 5 years of excise tax. That information is out there, it's easily findable. They can go see the town treasurer. He's not here, I mean, if he was, I would ask him, Rich, how would you provide that information? I'm sure you go to the assessors. You served on that board at one time. You would know excise tax increase 1 year over next, abatements 1 year over next, and you can give that information to a person. How many years we have audits online right now?
Yeah, at least 6.
At least 6. So I could go online right now and find Mr. Scanlon's audit from last year.
Yep.
That would show ambulance receipts, for example. And he clearly disproved it. He said it's not there. It's under Deb Schedule A. Well, that's not there. Yes, it is. It's under this. And as he said, and you said more paper, for him to break down every revenue source or every expenditure source, it'd be a superhuman effort. And to go back again, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. You said, how do we know they work overtime? You know how you know? He's in charge of highway, parks, cemeteries, beaches. He's fire and EMS. He's the police chief. Jonathan is the town administrator. If someone's working overtime, I know you weren't accusing, but to put that thought out there, if somebody was getting paid for overtime and not working it, they would suffer the consequences as department heads. So whether you're just using examples just because, like a shock value, I'm not sure, or just because that came out, to accuse someone at the transfer station of taking cash, blatantly untrue, and to accuse person X of working overtime and not working overtime and getting paid for it, blatantly untrue, because I trust our department heads, I trust previous department heads to maintain and handle their budget, and when they submit it weekly, the voucher's submitted, those 3 department heads, pick any other department head that has people underneath them, they're the one that looks at it and says, oh, employee X worked 4 hours, employee Y, they handle it, they take care of it, and as Mr. Scanlon stated, there's no red flags that show any kind of financial mismanagement or numbers missing in any column, anybody's department, any budget that generates revenue, or any department that incurs an expense. So I just think that's unfair to, again, was it shock value? Was it just a wild example? I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, John, I've known you a long time. To say someone's pocketing cash, or someone's working and not getting paid, or someone can't find the information, not true. Not even close to truth.
Through the chair. Steve, I think that's unfair, because I wasn't accusing anybody of anything. I was using it as a hypothetical example of a cash transaction. I mean,
Which
there
doesn't
are...
exist. It doesn't exist at the transfer station. Not fair. That's not fair.
So I apologize for the transfer example, but if there's any departments that receive any kind of cash, what are the safeguards? That's all people want to know. I mean, you can go through a dozen examples, and Hubbardson, right? You know, $500,000 from the town over a decade. These are cases he's personally familiar with. Pittsfield, $100,000 in town funds. A lot of this stuff is, you know, where he's been called in to actually do the forensic audit. Fraud just doesn't pop out and say, hey, I'm fraud. There are red flags. And someone that has ill intent, that knows the system, knows what will trigger those red flags. All I'm saying is, under the old Ronald Reagan premise, which is what I model my life on, trust but verify. People in town at the bank level statement. But, you know, he hasn't spent time with the individual departments, and maybe that's what we do, is maybe just say the top 5 revenue producing departments. Let them spend time. Reassure people, because people will support the town. Again, you know, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I certainly, when I became chair of the planning board, I went through every subdivision. I went through every receipt with Gloria Harvey. We spent many a late night doing it, because I wanted to make sure that on my watch, nothing was gonna jump out. No alligators out of the swamps, we used to call them, remember?
Out of the box.
Yeah. So,
And you can explain to Pat Fanning French about her road, because that was one of them.
yeah,
She got
yeah.
up tonight and said she's not happy and she doesn't think it's fair, so
So all I'm saying is,
that happened when you were on the planning.
don't be defensive when the town asks for audits or performance audits, or to know where all the Chromebooks are. I mean, how many people thought we gave the schools, each teacher, a Chromebook
Not
or a
me.
laptop at school, and find out that they don't have laptops, they put them around in a cart? That blew my mind.
I didn't think that. My daughter's a teacher there. So
But a lot of people, that's what I'm saying is, trust but verify. That's all. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to make it into a one-on-one personal thing. Trust and verify is what Mr. Scanlon has just spent an hour plus talking about. He goes through it. If there's a small anomaly, they dig back deeper. If there's a bigger one, that triggers the red flag. And again, how many years you been doing this for us?
This, I think I was on, when did I start, 8 years ago? I mean, we, as a firm, we were, as a,
Hey, your
no,
father
for me,
first.
me as a partner.
Yeah, I'm talking about your firm.
Yeah, my firm was in here, 30
Yeah, longer than I've been elected.
30 years.
And again, that was my original question. Have we ever not acted on a recommendation? And you just said, you clearly, usually not, but if there's a discrepancy on the recommendation, you sit down with treasurer or the accountant, and you hash it out and figure out, okay, maybe we do this instead or do this instead. There's never been I just don't understand the thought process behind a problem that doesn't exist. If, hypothetically, Department X, I'm not gonna name anybody, we're picking on the chief earlier, has a $40,000 revenue shortfall, Mr. Scanlon's not gonna say, well, let it go to next year, see if it evens itself out. Maybe the cash draw will be even next year. He's gonna dig deeper, and he's gonna come to that one department and say, wait a minute. Like you said, are the checks not getting cashed on time? Are the bills not going out on time? Why do we not meet? Because you can talk about revenue projection. You've helped the town with your report helps with revenue projection. There's no, I don't see the magic bullet or the pill, the poison pill that's triggering the town. And you know, I appreciate John's research. He talked about Hubbardston, and Mr. Scanlon indicated they'd work on that. John did say he works on other towns. I would prefer someone stand up there and say, Scanlon found this in Dudley 2 years ago and didn't do anything about it. I really don't care about Hubbardston, Uxbridge, or whomever. I care about, at the end of the day, the end of the week, the month, the year, that the town of Dudley is doing things in the best business practice possible, fair, open, and transparent, because I challenge anyone that come in, and I know Pat Fanning French is a good example. She didn't get the answer she needed the other day. We're working on it. I challenge someone to come in and say what happened and not get an explanation. May not be the one they want to hear, you know, and to talk about Pat's subdivision is probably one they didn't want to hear all those years. But a lot of those problems supersede everybody who's been involved in town government. But to come in and say day-to-day or forensic audit when there isn't even a problem, there's not even a problem. And Mr. Scanlon made it clear, he'll lay out his data for anybody. I'm sure he doesn't want 10,000 people to come in, but I applaud the chairman for putting on public comments on this issue. I mean, it'd be easy for us to sit here and let Mr. Scanlon talk, and at the end of the day, close it up and leave. I mean, he's willing to address it, I'm sure. Like I said, he doesn't want 10,000 people calling, I'm sure. But there is no red flag, and it's not, I'm not questioning me being defensive. If Mr. Ruda, who's charged with compiling the budget, did something wrong, I'm gonna call him on it. If I felt the department head is not submitting accurate income and or expenses, I'm gonna call him on it. And it's not a question of ambulance shifts or police details. if there's something blatant, I'm not gonna let it slide, and I certainly don't think this board's gonna let it slide. There's a lot of talent and skill on this board. We have CPA, we have people that are in management positions, state level positions, private industry positions that deal with numbers every day. So I don't think we have anything to hide. I think we're as transparent as we can be, and for Mr. Scanlon to come in and affirm that with hard documents should put to rest a lot of the fears and angst or non-transparency thoughts about what we could do. And I'm sorry if I'm on a soapbox, but
I think I'll put a bow on this unless someone's got.
I have one more thing while we're on the topic, and it's just for public information purposes. If you go to dudleyma.gov, you go into town accountant, you look at the FY '23, FY '24, FY '22 weekly expense sheet, you will see by line item everything that any department has spent. That's the same report that I see is now posted online and has been for at least 5 years. The only thing you can't see from that report, for if you went to EMS expenses, is the actual invoice, for example, and I'm using EMS expenses as an example, for the case of rubber gloves that the chief bought. If you want to see, and if you need so much transparency that you need to see the invoice for the case of rubber gloves that the chief bought, you can do a request for public information, and we will, within 10 days, provide that invoice to you. I'm not sure at what point the oversight is incorrect, the transparency is incorrect. Everything that we spend is approved, is recommended by the FAA to the town meeting. It is approved by the town meeting. It's based on a recommendation of each individual department head to me. It's based on a vote of this board, ratified at the town meeting, and that money is then spent week by week, and it's shown online, everything that's spent out of it. The level of transparency, at some point you have to trust that your department head is watching for someone to slip money into their pocket or to spend money inappropriately. At some point there has to be some level of trust, because why do you have appointed officials at that point? Why do you have a police chief if he's not going to oversee his budget? Or a fire chief if he's not going to oversee his budget? And you can't ask him, or this board can't call him or her on the carpet and ask the question. At some point, you've got to trust what's going on.
Okay.
can I have one more thing before the ball goes on?
I fire chief, I don't want him throwing something at me, please.
Well,
go up there.
as he's walking up, Mr. Chairman, we have a minimum of 3 seats on our FAA available right now.
Yes,
That's where I was
If
going.
yes.
people have the skills, the knowledge, the technical ability
No, I'm not
to
gonna
assist their town, if it's our appointment, I will gladly recommend them. Even if they don't have it, you wanna learn, it's a good board to learn. You'll learn about numbers and columns, and if you were on the board, your eyeballs will bleed.
They still bleed every day at work. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I don't know about all the other stuff, but as far as ambulance receipts go, because I know it was kind of a hot topic tonight, I submit that report monthly to the board. It breaks down every single private vendor, Blue Cross, Tufts, Mass Health, Medicare. You get a monthly statement every month. All that money is electronic through Unibank. I give a copy to Debbie as well. She gets my monthly report too, because I send her a copy. So there's no money passing hands. It's all electronic through the bank. I never see any of it. So the numbers are given monthly, what we make, what the percentage was over last year, and then at the end of the fiscal year, you get a total amount, 690, 700,000. So I don't think you can break it down anymore.
And we do, we do an audit procedure in ambulance where we tie in that revenue report to Debbie's general ledger and also to the bank. That's one, we tie that revenue because that's one year large revenue stream, so we're doing procedures in that area. So.
Go ahead. Everybody in, water's warm.
Just real quick from the police side, we're one of the bigger departments that has a bigger budget. Most of ours is salary, and then we have overtime and expenses. And I can tell you right now that the expenses, the vouchers go through myself, through lieutenant, or the secretary. It also gets double checked by somebody else. Then it goes to Debbie, then it goes to Rich. So there's always nothing there that it's almost like a balance and checks. As far as the overtime, at least internally on the operational side, any overtime has to be verified by somebody else, whether it's an OIC, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and then finally, I check it. At the end of the week, I check all the slips. I make sure that nothing, any overtime that's worked is legit and actually somebody worked it. Because at the end of the day, my name is on that payroll when I submit it. So I know, some of the residents, want to make sure there's transparency. There is, and I'd be more than willing to show that information to anybody, if anybody wants it. Thank you.
Thanks to both chiefs.
Jeff, you're done? You got something else?
You can be here all night if I keep talking. so-
I know, that's why you got the floor there, senior selectman, if you want it.
And it goes back to operational. And it wasn't an operational audit, but we had the Abrams group come in, do like a salary study, but they also incorporated into it what people actually do. They sat down with every employee. Some have statutory obligations, and others work under that direction. They all indicated in writing what they do, what's required of them, what they do above and beyond. One of the recommendations from Abrams was creation of a DPW. We took it to the town meeting floor. It was defeated. So when you talk, like John talks to the state about an audit, the first, they talk about departments, well, DPW, we don't have one. What do you mean you don't have one? That's fine. People spoke, we don't have it. We, just like Mr. Scanlon, we have taken other outside agencies that paid for by the town, report results to the town, do not report to the town, and have tried to, and in most cases, incorporated those suggestions. They were backed up by hard data, hard numbers, hard operational, practices. Sometimes ubiquitous you get what you want, and sometimes you get what you ask for. We tried, this board and other people tried to change the way we do business on some things. Wasn't done. That's okay. We don't win them all. But people have to understand that. We're not operating in a vacuum, like John said. I'm retired. But everybody up here's got a full-time job. And we ran for a purpose, I get it. I'm not looking for a crying towel. We have to trust department heads. We have to trust administrator that oversees the departments that report to us. We have to trust our staff. She's here. We trust our assistant town administrator. We trust the people in the position they're in, and if something goes wrong, it's dealt with, it's addressed, and it's handled. I answer every phone call. I answer every email eventually. I talk to people. I don't shun them. John, I know nobody up here does. If there's a problem, come forward. The fire chief, police chief, Jeff, have all indicated. You got a question about ambulance receipts? He can show you. You got a question about detail pay? He won't give you the names. He can show you. Incoming revenue? He can show you. It's on the state, I'm gonna say the wrong word, cherry sheet or whatever. Revenues we get generated by, for example, motor vehicle infractions. The information's there. I don't have it off the top of my head, nor should I have to. You go to your treasurer or the accountant or the chief, for example, and say, hey, you got a ballpark figure what Dudley took in traffic infractions in 2022. He probably can't get off the top of his head, but he'll get it for you. He's not gonna say, no, I'm not gonna tell you. It's out there. The information, it's out there. And it's not an AI-generated website. I don't know what more can be said, Mr. Chairman, so,
I'll say it.
good night. No, I'm just kidding.
No, better than that. I'll put a bow on this. I know you've got probably somewhere else to be this evening, Mr. Scanlon, like bed.
My two daughters are
you know.
at college, so my wife's just waiting home for me, and that's,
Well, Deerfield's
she probably doesn't want me home.
Well, we're not gonna keep you. So basically, we're doing all we can. If there were red flags, there would be red flags. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what the voters think. So, ballpark, I don't wanna make this into a 30-minute conversation, but I'm gonna give you some ballparks. Tell me if I'm in the neighborhood. A full forensic audit is in the six figures. It's
Oh, yeah,
over
yeah,
100 grand.
Yeah.
Probably 2, 3, 4, maybe more.
You wanted to know for the whole town of every
Whole town,
department?
everything, soup to nuts.
I would, high six figures, yes.
High six, not quite 7, but high 6.
No, yeah, it's good, yeah.
Operational audit, again, we're looking 6 figures, probably low 6 figures for the entire town. And I don't mean to lead you, but I'm just throwing it out there to a range, we're not asking.
Yeah, I've seen on, I'm just trying to think of like the ones I've seen that were basic with like the Department of Public Works, 5 to 10, how many departments you have, times 10 by the departments. You know, if you did one each department, that's rough figure.
100 grand, 90, 100, 80, 75?
I would say 100 grand.
10,000.
So basically, if, I know John's working with people in the state, I mean, geez, he's talking to them almost every day. It's kind of not funny, but it is funny.
I do my
But the
part,
bottom
Mr.
line
Chair.
is, if residents want these audits, they're gonna get it. There'll be a question on the town meeting, what have you. They're gonna get, and I'm not, whatever. I'm not trying to dissuade or persuade or anyone, just presenting facts. This is what I do in my day job. I present facts, and people make their decision with what they want.
There's definitely a time and place for forensic audits and management audits and operations.
Kind of a fool's errand to do it, I get it, but if people want it, if it's
People want it, they
gonna
can get
make
it.
them feel good, they wanna
Correct.
spend the money.
Yeah, I mean, another example I can give you is a town up in the Berkshires. They were adamant there was something wrong with their water fund. They were adamant. What it was is they, over 12 months, they're supposed to bill every month, and it's a set number of fees. They took the water budget of $250,000, a very small water district, and they divided by 12, and they're supposed to send out a bill every month. Well, when they missed a month, they didn't get the basic charge, which would be $5 for usage. And so they were billing, so they missed 3 months. Well, it wasn't revenue was missing, they just were billing in error. They had a forensic audit in that area. I mean, it kind of stood out once you looked at the numbers, like, yeah, they developed their billing system over 12 months. Well, if you only send out 10 bills, you're missing 2 months of basic, the minimum fee. And they hired a forensic audit. I think they paid $65,000 to come back for that. But it made everyone feel good. But
Sometimes people wanna spend money and feel good, and that's okay.
that's perfectly okay.
Mr. Zakowski, and that's it.
I just, just to throw some real numbers out, they're called asset management studies. We're doing one right now with the water department, we're doing one with the sewer department. The water is just finishing, and the sewer is about midway. Both of those, that's just to look at what we own, are at $175,000 apiece. So that's an audit, basically, that's an audit of what we own. How much pipe, how many hydrants, how many shut-offs and where they are, all of that kind of stuff. $175,000 apiece. That's just for equipment and assets. Those are real numbers.
Starting to think I
Just
should
to,
have
just to throw to get a benchmark.
That's quite.
I'm all for auditing when it's necessary, but I think you're right in.
Through the chair,
in-
Scott, are you being required to do that for some other kind of funding measure or project planning? Or is it?
Are we being required to do it?
Yeah. What was the need for it?
There's a state requirement to have something like that, but we've got an old system and aging, some parts of it are aging, we need to know what it is. And, to modernize our data and find out what's actually in the ground, and what needs to be in the ground, and what needs to be fixed, and what doesn't need to be fixed. Anybody who is on the water district or the sewer district and knows and has received a bill, I am one of them, and I feel your pain. We've raised significant fees in the last couple of years, but that's paying for all of the improvements that we're doing, and these studies, audits, are going to tell us if we're going, what direction we need to go in the future. So I'm just saying I just threw that out there those are some real numbers. I'd never really thought of them as an audit until tonight, but it is an audit.
As required by the state.
Right.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Scanlon, for coming. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe
Thank you, Tom.
you have any
Very
questions anytime,
informative,
don't
as
hesitate
always.
to.
Thank you for all you
Thank
and your
you.
team do.
Yes,
Thanks, appreciate it.
thank you for the folder with the clips.
Makes me look good, doesn't it?
We all, yeah.
A rubber stamp's not in there, though.
No rubber stamp?
No, not nowhere to be found.
I thought for sure you had a big one you were gonna show us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tom.
Old business, Gentex Optics, IRA regarding Eagle Drive, authorized town administrator to negotiate with town council and Gentex. Mr.
Last year, Mr. Chairman, the board authorized me to, and when I say me, I really mean town council under with my assistance, to negotiate a one-year shared cost agreement, and I'm asking for the board to do the same thing this year and sign it. And obviously, it's recommended that the board vote on this because it's a legal matter and it's not something that we can really discuss publicly, so I'm asking for the authority once again this year to go ahead and negotiate with Jeff Blake.
So, Mr. Chair,
Sullivan.
documentation was in our OneDrive, so this is just a continuation granting authority from last year with the ongoing issue. It's not anything new, it's not anything non-transparent, it's an ongoing process we've already authorized.
And it's a legal matter too, through the chair, that we can't discuss right now, but it essentially, and what I can say is it's a cost-sharing agreement with Gentex to pay for the filtration systems on Eagle Drive.
Okay, make a motion
Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
regarding the IRA, regarding Eagle Drive, we authorize the town administrator to negotiate with town council on our behalf and Gentex.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Apologize, my screen. Next on the agenda, the municipal aggregation plan, board to accept plan. Mr. Ruda?
Mr. Chairman, this is the plan that has been floating around for quite some time since the vendor came in to talk about the municipal aggregation plan. What they need is a formal vote from the Board of Selectmen to accept the plan so we can move forward to the next steps to get that, the ability to purchase discounted electricity.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan?
make a motion for the Board of Selectmen to accept the plan as presented by the town administrator for municipal aggregation.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Good to see that moving forward, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
yes. That helps everyone who pays an electric bill, if they want. Next on the agenda, departmental communication. Jeff, we haven't heard from you tonight. We'll let you go first. Anything?
Just, the only thing I really have is we're just preparing for equipment for snow and ice. And we had one new employee that started today, truck driver labor, so that's pretty much about it.
Mr. Chair, while Jeff's up,
Yes, Mr.
I think, Jeff, if you can, if it's appropriate, we lost some employees due to the budget cuts, guys found other employment as we thought may have happened. And if we want Jeff to do it, if he wanted to sign a letter on our behalf, thanking the gentleman that left the department, his service to the town. Some had been there a few years, one had been there many years. But just at least acknowledge, not at least, we should acknowledge their service for the town and wish them well in their new endeavors. We usually do that when somebody leaves. So if you give us a list, Jeff,
Sure,
Kerry can sign
I
on
can
our
do that.
behalf, or you can do it for us and just let us copy us.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Fire Chief, do you have anything?
Just that the fire department's pairing with the Marine Corps League of Worcester again to do Toys for Tots. We have 2 bins down at the firehouse, so if you want to donate any toys, you can drop them off at the lobby and the drop boxes at the fire station. We did it last year, and it was very successful.
Thank you, Chief. Police Chief, do you have anything?
2 weeks ago, we got notice from the state that we received a grant for the Click It a Ticket, $20,000. That money is going to be spent throughout the year for extra traffic patrols. We get reimbursed. That's to put more patrols out there. Also, today was Leslie Chauvin's first day. She was hired to replace Lauren Milosh as the administrative assistant to the police department. She did real good today. And last, dog citations. Since the police department took over as the ACO for the town, Lori has helped me with people who had not registered their dogs. It started off with about 250 people, and now we're down to about 100. Unfortunately, I did have to submit paperwork to court to pursue these fines. I'm hoping that people still have time, if they're on that list, to reach out to the town clerk to try to correct the situation, and hopefully in the future years that we won't have that issue. And just like the fire chief, we are still doing our toy drive again for Christmas. We'll put bins out in the lobby in the next week or two. We also welcome donations to the Patrolmen's Association. What we do is we usually have about 40, 50 kids a year that get put on the list from the town residents, and sometimes we even help out some of the neighboring towns. And by the donations by the residents, it brightens up somebody's Christmas who's in need. So if you have a little bit extra, always forward it to the Patrolmen's Association. We'll try to help out as many people this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Student representative, don't have any. Scott, did you have anything else besides what you said? No, we're good. Board member comments. Mr. Johnson.
Well, it's that time of year where holidays are coming. Still one of Mr. Sullivan's lines to check on your neighbors, family, friends, the elderly, people in need. It's a tough time of year.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank Steve Rogerson, the Webster Dudley's Veteran Council, Parade Grand Marshal, Parade Committee, don't want to leave anybody out, Shepherd Hill Marching Band, everybody who participated in the Veterans Day Parade this year. The weather was extremely cooperative. I don't do a head count every year. Mr. Landry's a veteran. I thank him for his service. It seemed to me we had for Veterans Day, we had a fairly robust turnout of veterans. It's a good march. It's not that difficult. We went from here to Webster. Paul Kajowski emceed the event, as he always does. Just a nice day. And again, I'm a son of a veteran. We thank everyone that served for their service, and prayers for people that are currently serving. And one more thing, Mr. Chairman, maybe I got a little passionate tonight. I think it was good having Scanlon come in. I think it was good dialogue back and forth with him and the public. And again, as transparent as we can be, come and get the information. Don't believe everything you read online. And we're not meeting before Thanksgiving. I hope everyone has a safe, healthy, and happy holiday season for Thanksgiving. And echo Mr. Johnson, please check on your friends, neighbors, and elderly. No one knows what's going on in somebody's house, and sometimes a knock on the door or a phone call, a hello on the street go a long way. So be safe, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Landry.
Yes, sir. Veterans Day went well. Thank you, everybody, for that. Very much appreciated. It is a holiday season. Wish everybody happy holiday. And the weather is here where it's going to start sleeting, freezing rain, snow. Be careful on the roadways. I know there are a lot of landscapers and tree people out. Sometimes they're taking up a whole side of the road. Be careful. Just take your time. Take extra time. In the morning, it's getting dark early. In the evening, just be aware that there are a lot of people out on the roads, walking, running, working, driving, and we can't have public safety everywhere all the time. So let's play our part and just look out for one another, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindner. Mr. Marcy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'll echo that as well. Veterans Day was great, great turnout. It was on a Saturday this year, so just to see a lot of people support the veterans along the parade route was great to see. Always one of the great events that they put together. As Mr. Sullivan mentioned, you know, our veteran service agent, the Webster Dudley Council, you know, Richard Norton, the Grand Marshal for this year, well deserved. So thanks to everybody who put that together. Thanks again to Mr. Scanlon for coming in tonight and talking about this. I mean, one of the things we talked about, and one of the reasons why I'm spending a lot of my own time talking to the auditor's office is it is important that we want to establish or reestablish trust in some cases, as Mr. Breyer had said. It is important to me and my board members. So I'll continue to look into those things. But, you know, I also like to quote Ronald Reagan on occasion. So yeah, trust but verify was a perfect thing for tonight. And we hope this is a first step for people to sort of really, you know, look and see that we're doing what we can to alleviate any fears people have. And I mean that. So thank you for that, everybody who put that together. Oh, Debbie's left. Yeah, it's gonna snow. My phone said it's gonna start to snow, so everybody please be careful a little bit early. You know, I don't know how much we're gonna get, but I guess I should have paid attention to the weather earlier, Mr. Chairman. So, and that's it. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Marcy. I don't think I have anything to add. It is snowing outside, can see it out the window. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion
Well,
to
actually,
Go.
to go into executive session. Mr. Marcy?
Not to repeat.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we convene into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21A4, to discuss the deployment of or strategy regarding security personnel or devices, e.g. a sting operation, and not to reconvene in public session.
Unless the chair,
What?
unless the chair so deems.
Unless the chair so deems it necessary. Thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second. Does this need to be,
Roll call.
poll vote?
John Marcy, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Mark Landry, aye.
Jay Johnson,
Carrie Sigenovich, aye. Unanimous.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night.
Good night.
Good night.